Joining us via Skype as part of our SEC football preview from Mississippi is WABG TV sports director and Aggie Lane Fobbs, who covers the Mississippi Rebels. Lane, thanks for joining us.
No problem, Chris. Always happy to help out some people who I used to hang around Bryan College Station with.
Well, Lane, 8-5 is a strong season, but 3-5 in SEC play. Those losses coming to Alabama, Auburn, Missouri, A&M on a last-second field goal, and Mississippi State in overtime. How do fans and people around the team feel about last year?
I would say cautious optimism. Well, to really understand this answer, Chris, we have to go back to 2012. The hype was around Johnny Manziel. A&M was the darling of the SEC, but Ole Miss really quietly made a stride as well. They were a big surprise. They were coming off of a 1 or 2 win season in 2011. It was kind of like the Aggies. Things weren't really all that happy up in Oxford, but Hugh Freeze comes in, surprise turnaround season. He came into 2013 saying, hey, these expectations are a little too high. We've got talent, but we've got young talent. Give me some time to mold them. And he did, and even after that, they beat Vanderbilt in a thriller to open up the season on ESPN that Thursday night. They won a big game at Texas. The thing is, they won the right games. They beat LSU, but they were competitive against Texas A&M, and so I would say cautious optimism. They've got Robert Kimdichie should be back. He should be healthy. The offensive line last year wasn't quite as deep as Freeze would have liked it to be, he said. They have bolstered that. That should be better. Should help quarterback Bo Wallace make some better decisions because he's not getting flushed out of the pocket so much. And so, as I said, Hugh Freeze has made a lot of strides up there in Oxford to the north of us. And so I'd say cautious optimism.
So looking ahead to this season then, with 6 returners on offense, 10 on defense, what should the country expect from the Rebels in 2014?
You should expect another solid year. Another solid year of Rebels football because, again, as I said, they made it through the season with a lot of injuries. Linebacker Carlos Thompson didn't play for a lot of the year. He should be coming back and be available. These young wide receivers, especially Logan Treadwell, a standout SEC freshman. He's kind of Mississippi's answer to Mike Evans, if you would. He's coming back. And so when you have all those pieces returning and a coach like Coach Freeze to really mold them, I wouldn't be surprised if they surprise a few people even in the SEC. And again, the SEC West is wide open, I feel. When you look across the board, it's wide open for anyone. It's not, I don't think it's going to be just the stalwarts of Alabama and LSU. Some of these lower teams, traditional lower teams like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, they're going to push some of those top teams.
Well, it certainly feels like this year it is wide open. Now, starting quarterback Bo Wallace is outspoken, to say the least. I'm pretty sure he may come out after this interview and say they're going to win it all. But making a statement last season that he had the best receivers in the country, do you think Bo is good or bad for the Rebels, or is it somewhere in between?
With my pure journalistic hat on, I would say somewhere in between, depending on what he does on a given day, leaning toward good or bad. Now, he started the season, had a shoulder injury that doesn't get talked about enough. And again, the offensive line, the depth wasn't quite there last year. So he was making a lot of choices on the run. But there are some questions to me anyway, what's going on in his mind. I'll share a story with you guys really quick. I was at the Egg Bowl for the Thanksgiving game when they played Mississippi State. And, instead of his head being in the game, I'm walking up and down the sideline shooting things like we do. And I see Bo Wallace, he's jawing back and forth. Back completely turned from the game, going back and forth with some Bulldog fans about what he's about to do when he takes the field. To me, you don't really want your signal caller, your quote-unquote leader of the team doing that. But as far as his play on the field, I like that he said he has the best receivers in the nation. Be it true or not true, that is something that instills confidence in the weapons that you have. They're going to run that route a little bit faster for you. They're going to try a little bit harder to catch the ball, knowing that you, the quarterback, believe in him. So right now, he's somewhere in the middle. There's a guy, Devontae Kincaid, kind of pushing him for that starting spot. Don't think it'll happen. But I would expect, honestly, more of the same from Bo Wallace in 2014 as we did last year.
Speaking of last year, the last 2 seasons, A&M and Ole Miss played a pair of classic games. Is this an SEC West rivalry on the gridiron, or do you think I'm overstating things just a bit?
Right now, I could see this rivalry as me being an Aggie, candidly speaking. kind of similar to Oklahoma and Texas Tech. You know, it's not that pure just blood-boiling rivalry, but it's always fun. It's always a close game. One's always going to beat the other, kind of when A&M beat #1 Oklahoma a few years back, or when they beat Texas Tech. It's always something fun. It could be a second rival. It could be. You know, A&M's not playing Texas anymore. It's kind of interesting. Ole Miss is kind of the Texas of Mississippi. You know, Mississippi State is kind of looked at as the agriculture school, the little brother, the big brother, Ole Miss. Hotty-toddy, that's, you know, kind of pinky in the air type lifestyle that they live, or so the broad strokes stereotype goes. Kind of similar to Texas. So I don't think it's a rivalry, a big-time rivalry just yet. It's on the level of how Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were back when A&M was in the Big 12.
So as an Aggie, I can trust you can make that comparison and people will be okay with it. The Rebels have one of the more ambitious non-conference schedules. They start the season in Atlanta against Boise State. Now, why do you think Coach Hugh Freeze agreed to do that?
He wants to take this program to the next level. You know, there is a storied Ole Miss program, but it's here. You know, it's not really regional. I remember being in Texas this time last year. You don't hear a lot about Ole Miss, you know, and that can hurt recruiting when you're just a straight regional team. They cover Mississippi, obviously, and parts of Tennessee on the Memphis border there, but it's not a huge national footprint. And I think Freeze is trying to do that by going to Atlanta, scheduling some of these big games against teams like Boise State to kind of put the attention right there. There's also another game the next week. They're playing Vanderbilt at the home of my Titans. They're in Nashville, so I think that's what is good, and it's a good wake-up for the younger players. You know, Boise, Vandy, UL Lafayette, that's a nice little warm-up before going into Alabama.
Well, fan expectations and realistic expectations are sometimes far apart. So, Lane, what do fans expect from the 2014 Rebels, and what seems likely?
I would give them 7 to 8 wins. And, you know, you look at their schedule, it all comes down to October. They've got Alabama, at Texas A&M, home for Tennessee, and then at LSU. Those 4 games will dictate their season. That's a murderer's row. That's going to be a very tough sledding for them, especially for a team that's still kind of figuring out what it wants to be and what it wants to do going forward. For them to have maybe a 9-win season to really surprise, they're going to have another big win like they did last year against LSU. But I look at it, you know, where does it come from? Does it come from, do you beat Alabama early on when they're still kind of getting things started in SEC play like you? At Texas A&M minus Johnny Manziel, it'll be their first trip to Kyle Field. Do you get it there? That's the question. Where does that big-time win come from in that murderer's row of October? But right now, I'll give them 7 to 8 wins.
Well, I know Aggie fans hope it doesn't come here at Texas A&M. Lane, thank you again for all of your help with Mississippi football.
No problem. Happy to do it.
Now we go over to Chris Costa in the studio.